All right, everybody. We're going to talk about the brain and nervous system today. This will be an important um, chapter in order to connect the mind and the brain with the body, and then connecting the brain and the body to the environment. There's some really technical things in this chapter here. So I'm going to go through those as slowly as I can. And then when we meet again in class, if there's any questions, we'll stop for a few minutes to go through those questions. All right, so we're going to start off by talking about the nervous system as a basic blueprint. I forgot to mention this. I feel like recording Zoom videos and watching Zoom videos is very closely akin to being in classrooms. So I feel as if once I get around the 45-minute mark, I feel as if that's when the point is I start to lose folks. So just like in class, I'm going to try to go to a certain point and then stop and then pause, and then we'll go through a part 2 or part 3 if we need to. So the nervous system, basic blueprint. I'm going to give you some terms and some terminology and some words, and then we're going to continue to further delve into what the nervous system actually does. So when I talk to you about the nervous system, what does it do? The nervous system gathers and processes information, produces responds to stimuli, and coordinates the workings of different cells. So you might think of the nervous system as a superhighway that electrical impulses go down, and these electrical pulses help to run the functioning of different cells. Excuse me for having poor pronunciation. I'm recording this fairly late in the evening after a long day and even longer night ahead. So please forgive me for my failure to properly speak English. But it gathers and processes information, produces responses to stimuli. So I prick you with a pen and you go, ouch. Dr. Sims, why'd you do that? That's a nervous system that helps you to respond to that. So you're responding to outside stimuli. And then the nervous system aligns and controls different groups of cells to tell them what to do at what specific times. When I talk to you about neuroscience, there's several different types of neuroscience to go in. A lot of times you'll hear about neuroscience, but you only think about it being one thing. And I want you to know that it's more than one thing. So what do neuroscientists actually do? Well, they do a lot of what you're doing right now watching this video. They study the brain and the nervous system. And then they hope to gain a better understanding of normal behavior. When we think about neuroscientists, we're really trying to make this linkage between the mind and behavior. If I can understand the ways in which the nervous system functions within your body, I can then make a connection to the behaviors that I see you do on the outside. And then hope to understand all the brain can do. We're still learning. Anybody ever heard the myth that we only use 10% of our mind? That's not true. It's a falsehood. It's not a real thing. We use all of our mind, but we're not quite yet sure fully everything that our mind can do. So because we're still learning everything that our mind can do, we fall into this assumption we're only using 10% of it, but we're not. We're using all of it, but the mind is so complex that we could be studying it for a very, very long time. As a neuroscientist, if I can focus in on what the nervous system is doing, then that gives me some clues as to how the mind works. There's several different types of neuroscientists. So first, there are these cognitive neuroscientists. These people explore the biological foundations of consciousness, perception, memory, and language. So very focused on the ways in which the mind reacts biologically to these foundations of consciousness, this awareness of the world around us. How do we perceive things? How do we memorize? Our ability to acquire language. Neuroscientists will be interested in the interaction between the nervous system and our ability to acquire language. There's social neuroscientists. Talking about social neuroscientists, talking to you about things like attachment and attitudes, how we feel about a thing. Who do we see as a secure base for us as a child? And when I talk about a secure base, when I talk about safety, when I talk about shelter, when I talk about those folks who were parents or guardians. In what ways does being in the presence of these folks or being reared by these folks impact the development of my nervous system? So right now, I want you to start thinking about making linkages. How do I make a linkage between the nervous system and the way that my parents raised me? Affective neuroscientist. So how does the nervous system respond and react to emotion, motivation, and stress? If I give you an exam right now in class, you might suddenly be stressed. So what's going on in your nervous system at the time that the stress is happening? And then behavioral neuroscientists, interested in things like learning, conditioning, eating, and sex. So how you go about choosing what foods to eat, how you respond to those foods, the physiological changes your body goes through before, during, and after completion of sex, the ways in which you learn about the world around you, how to respond to that world. All of these things have a lot to do with your nervous system. There are nerve impulses that are traveling along your body at a high rate of speed when you see someone you are sexually attracted to. So it's a very quick process of realizing, boom, I'm attracted to that person sexually. So your nervous system, again, is reacting to the outside world and outside stimuli. So there are two, so the nervous system overall, so what we've been talking about, we're going to split that nervous system into two: the central nervous system and the peripheral. When I talk to you about the central nervous system, I mean your brain and your spinal cord. That's it. Spinal cord is a thick bundle of nerve cells wrapped together. When you think of it as the main point of departure for electrical impulses throughout the body. So your central nervous system, your brain, and your spinal cord. Your peripheral nervous system is everything that branches out from the spinal cord. So you have nerves that extend out of your spinal cord into your fingers, into your toes, into other parts of your body. All those nerves constitute peripheral. They work on the periphery of the spinal cord. So central, brain and spinal cord, peripheral, nerves. All the nerves that branch out. I'm going to leave this here for you right now. As you can see, the autonomic nervous system, the nervous system that's from the peripheral, and it is responsible for several different things. So I'm going to leave this here for you for now, for you to get a sense of comparing and contrasting your sympathetic and your parasympathetic. So when we think about our sympathetic division, think about things like dilating our pupils, relaxing our bladder wall. When we think about parasympathetic, constricting the pupils, digestion begins to function normally. We think about our bladder contracting. So these two things sort of work in opposite to one another. I'll leave this here for you as well. This might be the type of screen that you either want to draw on your notes or screenshot. Okay. Want to screenshot this is a good place to do it. And then this will help to guide you to learning the nervous system. So What does everything do? So remember here, right now, we're focused on the peripheral nervous system. We're going to break that down into two parts, and then we're going to into the somatic and autonomic, and then we're going to break the autonomic down to two further parts. This will be an easier way to take notes on this. So first, there's your somatic nervous system. It transmits sensory and motor signals to and from the central nervous system. So to and from the brain and spinal cord, the somatic nervous system sends out nerve impulses. We can think of this as the highway of the central nervous system. You can think of it as riding along the central nervous system and then getting off at certain exits to activate certain things. I want to move my right arm. Message comes down from my brain, goes through the spinal cord, rides along the somatic nervous system, and then my right arm moves. The autonomic nervous system controls how organs and glands function. Think of this as being on autopilot. If you had to think to yourself, gee, I need to make my heart beat, at some point you would forget, and guess what happened? You would die. You've been breathing this entire time you've been watching this video. You haven't had to think of it. If you were to think about that, at some point, you would get overly stressed or forget, or something would distract you, and guess what? You would die in a short amount of time. So this autopilot, autonomic nervous system, does all these things for us, so we don't have to spend so much time thinking about getting them done. Runs on autopilot. Sympathetic. Prepares the body for fight or flight. Use the parasympathetic to get us ready. I'm sitting here during a lecture. All of a sudden, the door flies open and a pack of wild wolves start staring at me and they're salivating. Looks like they're going to have dinner tonight. It's going to be me. I need to get ready to pick up something to fight them off with and then run away. So this whole entire fight or flight, that is going to be your sympathetic. Think of it as powering you up, like in a video game. It's powering you up and it's getting ready to let you strike or run away. Now, when you get away from that danger, guess what? You can't still be in that place of heightened fight or flight. You have to come down from that. So your parasympathetic brings you down. It keeps your, if you were to remain at the rate you are at when you were in fight or flight, you would remain at that high rate, heart beating fast, stress hormones out your body. If you were to do that in normal situations, eventually you would pass out from exhaustion. To prevent that from happening, your parasympathetic nervous system keeps you from overworking. It brings you back down to earth. Communication. There's two types of cells that you need to know. The first one are called neurons. You might also call these nerve cells. These conduct electrochemical signals, and they're the most basic unit we have of the nervous system. These neurons are useful because these are the pathways along which electrochemical signals travel in order to give us information on a thing. These neurons must work in conjunction with these glia cells. These glia cells support, nurture, and insulate neurons, but they also remove debris when neurons die. Neurons die, you can't keep all that debris around. It will clog up the area, and if it gets too clogged, electrochemical messengers can't go to where they need to go. So these glia cells you can think of as supportive cells to try to keep neurons healthy and to keep them safe, but also to clear them up after they die. These glia cells make the communication that neurons give more efficient. So more efficient and more effective. So you think of these glia cells not as sidekicks. Think of them as partners. The neurons cannot get their job done if glia cells are not there to assist them. Glia cells are also there to modify neuronal function. They can get neurons to do something different than what they've been doing, or to send different messages to different other neurons. So, in review, know two things. Know about the neurons and know about the glia. This is us bringing all this back to the real world right here. Bring it out of the textbook and bring it into the real world. This is what your neurons would look like under a microscope. They're connected together. They're sending messages to one another. And it forms this sort of complicated, irregularly shaped spider web of information that goes around. There are different types of neurons. So there's the spinal cord all the way to the Purkinje cells. Once you think about the different shapes that a neuron can come in, and know that no two neurons may always be the same. They may come in different shapes. They may serve different functions. And depending upon the function that they serve, the amount of connective ends on the end of that cell might change. So it depends on where they're located and depends on who else they're communicating with. This is a good sort of video that gets into that. This isn't really a video. This is a good picture that gets into that. So these synaptic vesicles go down the neuron. And then you have to jump this area right here, this synaptic cleft. As these vesicles come down to the end of these neuronal molecules, they open up. And then these chemicals called neurotransmitters jump this synaptic cleft. Now, here's the key thing from all this. I know this looks complicated, but here's the key thing I want you to take down. So here it goes. Once the neurotransmitters jump the synaptic cleft, they act as keys, like little keys to open doors. The neurotransmitters have to find what's called a receptor site. The receptor site is located on a receiving neuron. These two big green things are two different neurons. Neuron A is close, but not exactly near the second neuron. As it approaches, the synaptic vesicles approach the end of the neuron, then the synaptic vesicles open up, they release neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters jump the synaptic cleft, and they act as keys to receptor sites. Why is all this important? Why am I telling you this? When the neurotransmitter acts as a key to the receptor site, it's like opening a door. After the neurotransmitter lands in the receptor site, it tells the receiving neuron what to do. So, one more time. These two big green things are two different neurons. It's traveling down the neuron, electrochemical messages. In this case, neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitter reaches the end of one neuron, and then, the synaptic vesicles meet the end of one neuron, open up, and then the neurotransmitters have to jump the synaptic cleft. They act as keys, they land at the receptor sites, and it's like opening a door. After you turn the key, you can now tell the receptor site to activate some function of the receiving neuron. So it's these neurotransmitters, and they're jumping the synaptic cleft that tells the neuron what to do. The receiving neuron cannot react until it receives the electrochemical message from the neurotransmitter. Now, what are parts of the neuron? First, there are the dendrites. These are the branches that receive information from other neurons and transmit it toward the cell body. So I'm a neuron, I'm going to get information. You might think of these dendrites as reaching out to other neurons. And as you reach out, you receive some neurotransmitter message, and it tells you what to do. So when we look at the nerve cell, the branches that branch out are the dendrites. Cell body keeps it alive and determines whether it will fire. When I say fire, it means it determines whether or not it will send out some electrochemical message. There's the axon, the extending fiber that conducts impulses away from the cell body and transmits them to other neurons. So cell body decides that the message is going to fire. And so after that happens, then the neuronal message goes down the axon, headed towards another neuron. Myelin sheath is simply a fatty insulation. When I say fat, I don't mean like I overate dinner and I picked up weight. I mean, especially constructed fat that serves as insulation. Not the kind of fat that will be affected by your diet. It's the kind of fat that is used to help the nerve cell conduct electrical chemical messages in a more efficient way. The nerve cell we've already looked at. So this bundle of nerve fibers in the peripheral nervous system. And then the synapse. This point where electrical impulses are exchanged between two nerve cells. This is what it looks like here in practice. You can see the dendrites as they branch out. Then this synapse sends these messages, connects it to another nerve cell, and the electrical chemical messages jump that. The nodes are in between the myelin sheaths, which protect. The yellow is the myelin sheaths. That's the fatty deposits that encircle the nerve cell to keep it healthy. And then the cell body is sort of the living matter part of that nerve cell. All right. Let's move on. Chemical messengers. When I talk to you about neurogenesis, I mean the production of new neurons from immature stem cells. Stem cells are really important because you need stem cells for neurogenesis. When I talk about stem cells, I simply mean the immature cells that renew themselves and have the potential to develop into mature cells. The topic of stem cells has been controversial. The stem cells usually are from early developing embryos, and these stem cells can develop into any type of cell. But in order to get these stem cells, you have to utilize them from an embryo that is no longer viable. So it's very controversial. Gets into very controversial and very complicated moral questioning. Is it right to take the stem cells from a developing embryo, then use those stem cells to cure diseases that we have? Stem cells are extremely powerful, which is why they're of use and of note to medical science. But truth of the matter is, though, they also can only be extracted, at least right now, from developing embryos. So that's where the controversy sets in at. Stem cells have the trait of pluripotency. Now, I'm going to walk you through pluripotency. So you have this fertilized egg from where a sperm met egg. From that resulted this fertilized ovum, which then becomes a cluster of cells and forms a stem cell. The stem cell then becomes other things. It becomes pancreatic cells, muscle cells, brain cells, nerve cells, because all these things here, right? So when I talk to you about pluripotency, when I say a cell is pluripotent, it means that it's an embryonic cell and that it can be used to generate different types of cells in the body. It can be used to generate different types of cells in the body. Three main types of chemical messengers are in the nervous system. First, there's neurotransmitters. You might think of these as messages that tell other neurons what to do. Tell neurons to do a thing. There's hormones. Hormones are these messages to glands and organs in the body. When you think about hormones, think about puberty. What's going on in puberty? Hair starts growing on places that hair did not grow before. Body parts start growing that were not growing before. Body parts start getting bigger that were not bigger before. There are voice changes. We begin to see the onset of the production of sperm. We begin the onset of menses. So there's all of these are messages that are given to some organ or some set of organs to signify it's time for a change. So neurotransmitters communicate with neurons to tell them what to do. Hormones communicate with glands, tell them what to do. When you think about these neuromodulators, you can think of neuromodulators as the big boss. Neuromodulators are the ones that tell neurotransmitters and hormones what to do and when to do it, when to fire and when not to fire. Hey, neurotransmitter, why don't you go over there and tell that other neuron to do a thing? Or why don't you tell it to stop doing a thing? So we can think of it as volume control, right? We can think of neuromodulators as telling us to do a thing, but also telling us how much of that thing to do. So it doesn't just give you instruction. It doesn't just tell you what to do. It tells you at what intensity should I do it. So one type of neuromodulator might be endorphins. Endorphins are interesting because they do two things. First thing endorphins do is endorphins reduce pain. Say you've been running a marathon for 12 hours and you finally make it to the end. No matter how much you train, guess what? That's a really painful experience. So endorphins are released in your body, and they're released and designed to help you reduce that pain. However, endorphins also promote pleasure. Let's say it's a romantic night with your sweetheart. You've gotten yourself into some of that Georgia wine. So things start to get a little romantic, right? As sexual intercourse begins and continues, what is already a pleasurable thing will then become even more so, especially at and around the point of orgasm, when you or both of you reach that point. So these neuromodulators help to promote these increased feelings of pleasure that are already there. So pain gets brought down pleasure gets taken way, way up. When I talk to you about neurotransmitters, we have a few right now. I want you to think of neurotransmitters as like very fancy emails. They're designed to send some message and to send it quick. Types of neurotransmitters to be aware of. Serotonin. Serotonin sends a message to other neurons. It's time to go sleep, or you're hungry, or what is your mood today? If you are in class and class feels very hot, right? Temperature regulation. Dopamine. Things like emotion, pleasure, reward. Why is it so hard to quit drugs? Why is it so hard to stop drinking? Why is it so hard to stop doing cocaine? Because when you do that stuff, with the immediate effect is that it floods your system with dopamine. And you feel good. But then you overdo it, you overabuse it, then it burns out your dopamine stores. So you spend that time trying to chase always that initial dopamine high that you had. And you can never get it back. Acetylcholine. So muscle action, vigilance, things like emotion. Heart rate, stress, learning, and memory. So norepinephrine helps to bring some of that down, helps to encourage memory, helps you to learn better, to remember more information. GABA and glutamate are a little different. GABA is inhibitory and glutamate is exhibitory. GABA brings down other neurotransmitters. Glutamate pulls them up. So it helps them to have more versus bringing them down. Hormones. So, melatonin helps to regulate daily biological rhythms and promote sleep. Think about your daily circadian rhythm. Some of you don't have to set alarm clocks. It just seems to be the case that every day at 5 o'clock in the morning, you just wake up. So that's how your circadian rhythm is set. Now you can alter that circadian rhythm. Let's say that you are working a third shift job for years, and then you stop working that job. Well, you've now altered your circadian rhythm. So you still might get sleepy during the daytime and find yourself low energy at night. Sometimes it takes years to reverse your circadian clock to put it back to normal. Oxytocin. So it enhances uterine contractions during childbirth and facilitates the ejection of milk during nursing. There's also some research that suggests it is helpful for bonding of the mother with the child. So as she is breastfeeding the child, the mother's system is getting flooded with oxytocin. And it's thought that this promotes feelings of like connection and love. Adrenal hormones. So these are involved in emotion and stress. So you could be sitting here at your laptop, minding your business, all of a sudden you feel nervous or have anxiety attack. Something's going on with the adrenal hormones. Or you get some really bad news and you sort of experience that fight or flight. So that's your adrenal hormones being burnt out. One of the things, emotion and stress. One of the things that we like to do, we like to drink coffee, try to enhance adrenal hormone reaction. After years of drinking coffee, we find ourselves feeling sluggish. Why? Because coffee is a good way, long term, to burn out your adrenal hormones or to burn out your adrenals. And then our sex hormones, these long distance messengers that are there to send the message that it's time to get ready for reproduction. So it's time to develop what would be typically male or female sex characteristics. So the development of sperm, signaling to the body that it's time to release eggs on a monthly cycle. These sex hormones give those messages. All right, this is a good stopping point for us right now. So we'll stop there, and then we'll reconnect with this message as we go through the brain. As always, please enjoy this lecture, take notes, and then if you have any questions, we'll talk about it later.